Hey, good morning, everybody. Good morning to our audience, regardless of where you are. It's morning in Toronto, Canada, and it's afternoon in London. My name is Robin Ayub. I'll just do a bit of an introduction just to introduce you to the channel. My name is Robin Ayub. I am the founder of Localization Fireside Chat podcasting channel. And through this podcast that I created a few months ago, I have had the privilege to host insightful conversations with colleagues in our localization industry, and look forward to further conversations as of today's conversations promising to be. And I'm excited about this one. It's an incredible opportunity to bring together thought leaders in our industry, professionals, to tell their intriguing localization story. How did it all begin to them? What are they up to now? And perhaps discuss some trends and challenges and innovations in our industry, of course. The Localization Fireside Chat have become valuable resource for anyone passionate about the localization industry. And I'm proud to report that we're the fastest growing channel on LinkedIn in terms of pages of new growth that we're attracting. We're the fourth right now in all industries, and in not just in the localization industry. So we're off to a good start. Things are happening with the Localization Fireside Chat, and it's based on the content that we're delivering. We're delivering content that people like. And our YouTube videos are really hitting, like in our localization industry, it's pretty unreal to see, YouTube videos hitting over 1,000 views on YouTube. Generally, those YouTube videos that are typically in the localization industry stays around between 50 to 150 to 100 maximum. So also that's a good news for our audience and for our guests who are joining our channel as well. Today's topic, first, I want to introduce my good friend and colleague, and I've known him for many years, and I had the privilege and the honor to know him for many years, Pablo Navascues. And Pablo joined me from London, England today. And Pablo is a managing director for key content, and he is transforming that organization in many ways. But I can't wait to hear a little bit more about what he's doing there. And also, we're trying to cover today several things in our discussion. So, the major topics that we're going to try to start to address today with Pablo is four items. One is multilingual marketing. Everybody talks about multilingual marketing. We'll dig deeper a little bit into that. Maybe if time gives us if we have time, we'll uncover a bit more on that topic. AI content generation. Everybody's talking about AI content generation. I can't wait to hear Pablo's opinion on the matter. And also we'll talk about international SEO, which is very, very interesting for anybody who is trying to do marketing in regions that they are not natural to them. It's not originating from them. So those are target audience. Welcome to the show, Pablo, and welcome to the channel. I really appreciate having you with me today on the podcast. If you don't mind, just introduce the audience to you, who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself. The mic is yours.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Robin. I'm delighted to be here. You had so many excellent guests, so it's fantastic to be part of this panel. And by the way, congratulations on those amazing figures. I mean, those were some serious numbers that you show in there. So well done. Congratulations. So maybe a little bit about myself and a little bit about my, how I am part of this industry. So my name is Pablo Navascues. As you said, I'm based in London, in the UK. I just came back from, actually, I was in Germany for most of the week. So like you, I was traveling for business. And I'm currently, as you said, the managing director at Key Content, which is a global content marketing agency. And I think in terms of, my background, this industry, I always go back to something that someone that that Rory Cowan, the founder of Lionbridge, used to say. And he said a couple of times something that I've adopted. He said, this industry is great. And one of the good things about it is that it's full of misfits. Now, misfits can have a negative connotation, but he said it in a positive way. And what he meant was that in our industry, the number of people that that have an interest in the outside world, that have an interest in communication, that maybe has lived in different countries, maybe the significant other is from another country. I think that's something that's very unique to our industry. And I think it's something that definitely I tick a lot of those boxes. So you could apply a lot of those things to me. I've always been interested in content. I think, just to give you an example, when I was growing up and I was a little boy in Madrid, Spain, where I grew up, I wanted to be a journalist. So I used to write my own newspapers at a very young age. And at the same time, my parents used to travel quite a lot for work, and they used to bring me comics and cassette tapes from different places, and I used to love that stuff. I would not understand anything.
I didn't know that about you. I'm finding a few new things about you now, and I've known you. There you go. I'm glad we hosted you on this episode. I'm finding out new stuff now.
There you go. But I think sometimes it's interesting when you go back and where your interests lie when you were a younger person. I think that says a lot about you, and I think that's one of the reasons why I feel so at home in this wonderful industry of ours. I believe.
Comes natural to you, doesn't it?
I think so. I always been interested in this item, and again, I'm still like when I was a little boy. I still think it's fascinating. The world has changed. Certainly, it's a lot easier to access global content now than it was back in the 80s. There's no doubt about that. But I think this is an amazing industry and full of great people. And I think that, I'm sure we'll touch on that later. I think people in this industry has a lot to give into today's business environment and social environment. And I'm sure we'll cover that later. Maybe to tell you a little bit about how I got started in the language industry proper. So I actually started my career in publishing. So I worked for a publishing company. That was my first job. And then I did a series of roles in sales and marketing. And my first role in the language industry proper was for LanguageLine. It was in the early 2000s, and there was LanguageLine UK, which at the time was separate from LanguageLine US. Now is the same company, and I ran the localization department there. And LanguageLine was very unique at the time in that most of the clients were in the public sector, so that meant that demand for languages was very specific to certain groups. And, we had to be very creative, in terms of producing audio and video and a lot of different formats. And and by the way, that was a great company at the time. It was a lot of fun. And I loved it. And I said, since then, then that's when I felt, look, this is the industry where I belong. I want to stay in this industry. That's where I'm going to stay. So I stayed since then, right? And that's been 20 years since. So after LanguageLine, I joined a company called CLS Communication, which is where you and I got to meet for the first time, right? And then, yes, so for those that don't know, so CLS was a Swiss global language service provider, a fairly large one at the time. I think it was a top 10 LSP at the time. And it was very much focused on what is called now regulated industries, so finance, life sciences, legal, and I ran the UK. So I was the managing director for the UK. And again, I was very lucky. I had a great team. I think you were part of that. So it was an excellent group of people, yes. And it was a lot of fun as well, right?
Indeed, it was fun. It was very fun. I really appreciated the experience with CLS as you did. And, yes. I used to enjoy the gathering of the team like I do now. I mean, all of our industry is the same. It doesn't matter. Like anytime you get a few people from the localization industry, you feel the camaraderie and you feel the connection. And especially like if they are from the same company, we just had our conference in Montreal, the Canadian Language Industry Association.
Oh, great.
They come from different companies. They come from different, technology, service providers, etc. But as soon as they get into the room under the one roof and they start talking and they start engaging in conversation and networking, you feel like you're in a family almost, because they all have the same. They speak the same language. They have the same words. They have the same aspiration, if you will. They have the same outlook on things. And I remember when you and I working together at CLS, we had that. I mean, Doris Albaser, God bless her, and she said, she compared it to a family at the time. I mean, for those who don't know Doris was the CEO and the founder of CLS, and she always had this aspiration to make CLS a family, and she did at the time. You go to meetings, you feel like you belong to one family. So And I had the honor to meet many great people, including you, Pablo, in that space. So thanks for bringing that up. You just gave me good memories.
Yeah, no, it was really a fun time, as you said, a great culture, great focus on the premium side of the market as well. High quality. I think it was a great experience, and we know what the logistics, and you've done. You already know a lot about this stuff, so I know I'm in good hands. So I think we were we were talking about CLS, and then CLS was eventually acquired by Lionbridge. Which was another great experience. So, then I think my role changed. Lionbridge was organized in a different way. So it was not so in Europe, not so focused on markets, but more on groups of clients. So I managed different verticals and different groups. And again, another great experience. I was again very fortunate with having a great team. Most of them are still there. And then 9 months ago, so I made another change. So I joined Key Content. So I was approached by the owners of the company, and they said, "Hey, Pablo, look, we got this company. We are very ambitious. We want someone to help us growing and double the size of the business." And we had a number of conversations. And it was great. Like there were lots of things that I liked there. They had an amazing set of clients already. Very big brands that you would recognize. They were delivering amazing work, and I saw a lot of potential with the company, as I still see today, 9 months later. And then and so for me, I think it was interesting. It was interesting to work with global content that was close to localization, but not quite localization. So content creation and producing different types of content. And also for me, also it was a bit of a challenge in the sense that I've always worked for mid-size or larger companies, private equity owned listed companies. And this is more a company in a growth mode. Mm-hmm. And again, that's for me a new experience, which I'm really, really enjoying. So that's where I am today.
So tell me a little bit about, Key Content, like in terms of, give me a little bit of background if you don't mind, on the company, what's your aspiration? What would you like to do in 5 years? I don't know if there's a plan for that, or 2 years, or whatever it is. Just give us a little bit more of a, what's the raison d'etre, if you will, for Key Content?
For Key Content, excellent. Well, okay, Key Content is a company that's grown organically, and essentially what the company does, we were very focused on, especially on SEO, international content in different languages. So content that needs to perform. And I think this is one of the things that attracted me again about this business, is that you're not just producing or translating content for the sake of it, but you have a set of expectations where there is brand awareness or conversion or traffic or customer loyalty. These are really measurable activities, and content is a way in which you can achieve those goals. So again, I think that element is very interesting. Now, what is very unique about Key Content is that there are lots of agencies that do this locally, but I've seen very few people, if anybody, that can do it as well for so many markets. We have clients for which we produce daily content for maybe 20 plus markets. And again, content that performs, that delivers what the client needs to do. That's very unique to Key Content. Because we're very focused on online content. So our main industries are travel, e-commerce, which obviously the two biggest sectors online, and increasingly health. And health, I'm not talking about only pharmaceutical, but fitness, insurance, that sort of content as well. So those are the main thing. And our goal is, again, to help our clients find opportunities through content. So we see content as a means to achieve an end. And again, the end is more customers, happier customers, more loyal customers. And this is a way of one of many ways in which achieving that, but it is certainly an important one in the online world.
It's funny, you and I have talked about this many times over the years and the number of conversations we've had. And I can see over the the number of years that I've been in this industry. I think yesterday somebody was asking about this, on 21 years now in the industry, and probably the same amount for you. At the same time, I've seen this industry transform from an internal thinking industry to an outside in kind of an industry. Let me explain that, meaning that, you in the past, 10, 15 years ago, linguistically, you put a company together, you say, we provide XYZ companies, XYZ services, sorry, and then you wait for the customer to arrive. And then this is what we do, sort of boxed into our solution. And if doesn't fit, then the customer would go and find some other service provider to do the work. I'm glad to hear you, and I'm starting, not just you, I'm seeing the shift in everybody I talk to. Customer first, let's find out what the customer wants, and let's figure out a way to deliver the solutions for them. As opposed to in the past, we're saying, as I was, not to repeat myself, it's the opposite.
Yeah. And I think that's so important. I think, look, any business has to have that perspective if you want to thrive. And again, we know how everything is changing so quickly. So I think it's very difficult to be successful without that mindset. And it applies to localization, but it applies to any other industry that has an element of competition. Like I think if you go to the market just listing your products and your features, good luck with that. But I don't think, I think it's going to be a challenging ride for
you. You bring a very good point, Pablo. We don't produce content just for the sake of producing content. Content has a purpose. And how do we measure a success or a failure in a specific content is by what the consumer reaction to that content is. If somebody's consuming the content, right? So the measurement is very interesting and very important. And that's why it gets into the services that you offer. Search engine optimization in multilingual search engine optimization and a few other things on the content side of things. Let's dig into some of those topics and we've touched on that before in previous conversations, you and I. This entire, content in a multilingual content that help in multilingual marketing. Or the purpose of multilingual marketing is the multilingual to produce content in a multilingual nature. What is your thoughts on that in terms of, creating what content could, should we create the content in the source language and then translate it, for instance, or should we create the content in the native language? Which one is performing better? And where does this whole technology discussions that we're having on a daily basis enter into that conversation?
That's a great question. Okay, how long do we have?
Take your time.
Excellent. So look, that's a very good question. I think to address the first point that you covered there. So I think, and there's something I've thought a lot coming from the localization industry now, being more in multilingual content creation. Like, what is the difference? When do you translate? When do you write content? And I think there's no hard rule about that. Like, it depends really what the purpose of that content is, right? So I think anything that is informative, a press release, I don't know, there's so many types of content where localization, transcreation is a great option, and it works really well for many reasons. I think when it comes down to a very specific domain, which is if you are in a very competitive environment and you have, if you think about the travel industry, how many people are there competing with your business? So you need to stand out. So if I want to travel to Montreal tomorrow, I'm sure, I'm going to get 20 different websites offering me flights and different things. So how are you going to differentiate yourself? This is a super aggressive content. So if you're really fighting for that and you really want to attract customers, I think you have to be very mindful of what message you want to see. Where I'm a person that is searching that in the UK, or maybe I'm searching that in France or in another place, I think you're going to have to put a bit of thought into how you want to capture that customer. And I think that's where the data suggests that creating content, it performs better than localization. And I think nobody would be surprised by that, right? You're going to be able to personalize the message a lot more. You're going to have more freedom in how you craft that message. And again, I think especially, I think it's for me is the fact that you can really tailor it to your audience. So I think when it comes to SEO, when it comes to online conversions, content creation will always perform better than translation. Now, there are other factors there: speed, cost, right? Yes. So again, not every company wants to fight for every market. Some pieces of content are very long, maybe timing is an issue. And I think that's when you have to start to make trade-offs. Now, if my recommendation is always, if you have a product that is very important to you and you want to position it really well in international markets, I think content creation is going to deliver better performance, and the data would suggest that.
And so can you speak to the availability of resources in that space? Because when we move from, and the reason we translate, obviously, we don't create directly in target language content, is because probably there's so much to do from the target from the source perspective. There's big volumes, etc. And then the resources becomes an issue. It's easier perhaps to do the translation versus finding a subject matter. You don't want anybody to write that. You want subject matter expert to write it, I'm assuming, right?
Ideally, right? And again, I think one of the things that surprised me a little bit about the content marketing, or the multilingual content marketing industry, where I am now, is, if I can call that an industry, is that actually you can do things so it's not that much more expensive, or it doesn't take that long. So I mean, I was very surprised when I joined Key Content at the speed in which we could write millions and millions of words or sections of blogs. Almost it would take as little time as it would do with translation. So again, I think for me it's about the message. It's not so much, are you selling a product that is really expensive? Are you selling a product that is really competitive? That's where you want to differentiate yourself. Like we said before, you always have to think of the customer, right? Outside in.
Absolutely.
That is the way of doing that. Now, of course, and I think this touches with the second part of your question, we are seeing all this upcoming technology in terms of AI content creation and AI translation. And obviously, one of the things that's going to do is going to lower the cost of producing content in language, right? So without translating, you can actually create content directly into those languages. So cost is no longer as much a barrier as it used to be. Again, and we can go into that. That's a big topic in itself. But I think if you think about it, cost to speed is no longer a barrier, because there are tools that can help you navigate in that.
And we've talked about it yesterday as well. Like when we were preparing for this episode, is that in a world that is filled now with tools and software and assisted tools, I would call it, to make the job a little easier, to make it go a little bit faster, we agreed that we probably still need a human to be in control of that, be in somewhere, keeping an eye on, if I write a text and I use, I don't know, Grammarly, for instance. I don't want to mention any name because they're not sponsoring this channel, but here, I threw this one out. Grammarly, for instance, to assist me in my grammar or my dictation, etc. I'm still writing, but, because most of us are pressed with time and have got so many things to do, you may not be catching all the errors that you commit as you're writing. So tools like this can help us. And of course, ChatGPT and trying to generate some ideas on, or fine tuning a text. And you wrote it, you give it to ChatGPT and you put it in a little bit more, fine tuning of your text and then revising it after. It makes the job a little easier, but you're still involved. It's not like you press the button and all of a sudden the article has been published. No, you're still in the middle of it.
Yeah, and exactly. That's exactly how I see it. It is one more tool in your toolbox, right? Correct. So this technology, and by the way, obviously the whole AI conversation goes beyond language and content, right? So obviously that I think for me there are three levels. There's obviously a wider microenvironment conversation which talks about regulation and not for once it's not just our industry that is under the microscope, right? I think there's so many, if not every industry potentially be affected by that. But that's a topic maybe for another time. But I think where I see this technology really affecting what we do, for me in two different ways. One is the content creation, which I'll address in a second, and the other thing is going to change how we search, right? So at the moment, the typical search, you go to Google and I want to know, a nice restaurant in my area or things like that. And I think that's going to change how people search and how people get those results. That's going to change, which is going to change the way we produce content for that end. So that's, again, one subject, maybe more on the SEO front. On the content creation part, I think it's exactly what you said. I think it's a tool. I think you can use it very creatively. But also, I think it's a tool that, and by the way, there are so many content creation tools, amazing tools, right? So, I mean, I think that if someone is interested, we are doing at the moment a project on, you can follow it on our LinkedIn page, where we are reviewing different tools. So ChatGPT is the better known one, and obviously it's got a lot of coverage. But, we are reviewing, I think it's about 10, 15 different tools. And what we see is that some tools are better than others, depending on what kind of content or depending what you're trying to do with them. But, having said all that, this technology brings huge opportunities to businesses, okay? So similarly to maybe what we've seen with machine translation, suddenly, there are opportunities. Customers may be sitting on web pages that are empty, and they could do with content, and you could do amazing things with this technology. So one of the things that we started doing is we advising clients on how to deploy this technology, or we train this technology for them. And we try to brainstorm with them, where is the opportunity? And as you said, if you just think about, if you're a company that has millions of products, maybe you don't have the time and the budget to create product descriptions, right? And I think you can do really good work through some of these tools if you know how to use them, if you select the best tool for the job, and if you have the knowledge to know, as it's a skill to know how to use these tools and how to scale them up. So I think opens new opportunities. And I think, to your point, if you think of it as a tool in your toolbox and you find the right use case, you can do amazing things with this technology. And again, we are seeing that we are working on these projects today already.
Absolutely. And
that was a long answer.
Absolutely. And that brings me to the SEO, international SEO topic that we that sort of works itself through the conversation, because you cannot talk about multilingual marketing or content generation in multilingual or any language, to be honest with you, without having a conversation about what makes you stand out. So the content needs to be good. I get that. Now, and if you mentioned, say an airline industry or a travel agency or whoever they are, and because those they tend to be global in nature. I mean, yes, you have your local market, but somebody probably from different countries or different demographics, speaking language spoken in those demographics, they need to access your site. So you need good content to start with. And then when you've created the good content, that content cannot sit under thousands of pages on Google to be found. And you mentioned, you made a note on, the searchability. It's got to get better with ChatGPT and the new tools, et cetera. Somebody predicted to me that, those new tools will eventually replace Google eventually, because they're, just imagine the current tools that we're using and everybody's so excited about them. They're not fully 100% connected to the internet. Those are just user trained data that we're using. Imagine if these tools get connected to the internet. It's Google is investing money, Microsoft's investing money, all those big tech companies investing money in the generative AI type of tools. But take us through the journey, if you will, and you have a good background in publishing. So I wanted to pick your brain on if we start with creating good content, put it in the right place. How do I put my SEO strategy together to make sure I'm found in the market that I want to target? Excellent.
And look, this is a super complex question, and there's people in my organization that would be a lot better at explaining this. But the first thing I would say, I would do it the other way around, right? So you start with SEO.
So you do the analytics first, and then you create the SEO.
Exactly. So you want to know, a bit like what you do with any marketing activity. You want to know where the demand is, what people are searching for, who are your competitors, where are they, what channels do they use. So you will do this work, and then this work will inform the content. Right? Again, you could do it in a better or in a worse way. Some people just like stuffing keywords, and obviously that's going to read very badly. But you do all that work per market way in advance before you start writing, and that's what's going to inform the writers or the technology putting together this piece to what how to structure the content, what are the important topics to cover, what are people interested in. So the other way around. And again, as you rightly said, for every market, this could change, right? So the research is very, very important. There are other technical aspects to SEO, such as the speed in which the page loads and how Google treats it. That's kind of more the technical part. But at the same time, and this is something, and in a way, I find this is fascinating. And actually, it does take me back to my publishing company days, which is one of the changes we are seeing in Google at the moment, is that Google is because it's easier to produce content now through these tools. Google is rewarding content that is unique.
Authentic.
Right? And authentic, and that is written by a credible source. So, while we are seeing automation, content creation, automation of all this process, at the same time, what we are seeing is that what I call editorial content, which is content written by an subject matter expert on a topic, tends to perform quite well. So, for example, if I want to know about the localization industry in Canada, and I'm going to get you, Robin, to write an article. Why? Because you have a channel. You are someone that is out there, and Google will treat that content very well. It's okay. He is talking about something that he understands, and therefore I'm going to position this content in a better way. This is very new. This is new. I mean, Google has been doing this only for a few months, but it does make sense if you think about it. That's a way in which you can differentiate your content. So there is, as you were saying,
one would assume, Pablo, they're going to adjust the algorithms, right? I mean, with all the tools that are coming up right now, if they don't adjust the algorithm of retrievability or searchability, and that's going to put a whole bunch of junk, if you will, at the top of the scale, which not necessarily a authentic or opinion that is written by a valid person.
And it's not what you want to read, right? So if you think about it, we think about, it's more cost effective to produce content, but let's think about the consumer, how they're going to react. And I think this is a reaction exactly to what you just said. If I've got to, I could ask ChatGPT to write an article about the localization industry in Canada, but I'd rather read the one you write. That's going to be far more interesting, and Google is going to reward yours, not the other one. If it's an anonymous, content that doesn't add any value to the reader. So I think that's very interesting because, and as always people say, and we saw this in localization, right? Oh, machine translation, the end of the translators. We've seen exactly the same thing. Is the end of the writers. Well, actually, if you're a good writer with a good profile, with a good social media presence, I think you're going to be doing very well in the next few years.
This whole resistance to change topic, I should probably do an episode on this one. It is not specific just to the translation or I want to call it the knowledge base industry. Every human trait or every human, probably, most of us don't like to be introduced to new ideas or new change. I design my world. I am in my world. Don't introduce a lot of changes to that world because I'm comfortable within that world. And, the same goes for translators, desktop publish. It doesn't matter. I'm speaking about just our industry, right? Sure. And then you have these ideas that are being generated from outside of our industry. This is a fascinating part. These hard technology, these are, I want to call these changing technology. These are very breakthrough technology that we're seeing right now. They did not get generated from inside of our industry, which is fascinating. This should have been been created in our industry, not from outside our industry, and our industry being the recipient of it. Now, this is where, the conversation that I touched on yesterday, and I'm putting a panel on this. I hope you agree to be my guest on that one. Is the localization industry, served its purpose the way up till now, and now we need to talk about be it a part of the knowledge-based industry. So have the old-fashioned translation, and this is not obviously work for everybody. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying for the companies that are evolving beyond taking a document, translating it, sending it back to a customer, have we now moved into a knowledge-based industry? And this is what we should be considering ourselves. And, let's talk a little bit about the knowledge-based industry. And you're doing it. I mean, from what you've described to me in key content, you are there already. I mean, you're not just localizing the content, you're creating the content, and you're doing a whole bunch of work and services. You're offering a bunch of services around the content. And this is where most of the traditional, what we call them boutique, small to medium size, and there's about 19,000 of them apparently in our industry globally. It's going to be a market for everybody. I mean, let's face it. Some customers are going to prefer to do the artisan way of doing translation, right? So just like a baker, you go to your baker, say, hey, I want handmade bread by my local baker. I know him. And some people, I don't care. I'm just going to go to the supermarket and buy a bunch of them and throw them in my freezer.
Sure. But I think that's a very interesting topic. And I think I would go even further. So I think that there is the whole thing about adapting. And as you said, changing a little bit the focus of the industry. But let's think about the opportunity. I do believe that people in the localization industry are very well placed to take advantage of these changes. All these things are things that we've all been hearing, admittedly to a different scale, I know. But when machine translation came over, the way the concept of garbage in, garbage out, how do you prep files so they can perform better through TM, so machine translation? We do have, this is in our brains. We've been dealing with this for a long time. So I think people in our industry are very well positioned, better than other industries, I would say, to take advantage of these changes. You just need to know, to your point, what problems are you solving with them? And I think, in addition to what you're talking about, change, I think what you cannot do is try to compete with these technology giants, right? I think that for someone to try to compete against that, I think that would be foolish. You just have to embrace that change and use it for your own purposes.
And you spoke about opportunity, which is where we need to be thinking, all of us, because we're all business people at the end of the day. And we do the service for two reasons. One is to enable communication between demographics, which is very ideal. And we want to be a good citizen. And we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing for everybody to enable communication, creating bridges. And the other thing we do this, and which is very, very important, we do it because we're business people. We want to create a stream of revenue, a stream of profitability out of it. So think, I'm always surprised, if you take it on a micro level, just a micro level, take a project, website, whatever. Somebody developed a website. They created, take an example, finance company, pharmaceutical company, etc. They spend $1 million creating, I'm just throwing that as an example, creating a website. And then just toward the end of that creation project of the website, somebody decides, we need to translate this. And then they send it to a translation company or a localization company. They spend, let's say, $50,000. I'm going to throw that number in there. So, and then from there on, they just take it and publish the content. And what did the localization industry got out of that? $50,000. The size of the knowledge-based industry worldwide is $382 billion. The size of the localization industry is $60 billion. So the size of the pie, if we transform our industry, is much larger from a business opportunity perspective. That's my opinion.
I think you're absolutely right. So I think, and I don't know, maybe as an industry, we've been guilty of that in the past. I don't think we've done a good job at selling the value of what we do. And I think this is why that would be my advice, that we need to change that. I think if you spend those $50,000 localizing the website and that doesn't do anything for the client, fine. But is the client suddenly able to offer products and services in a new market and they're getting a response? And, let's think about what their goal is. If people are translating for the sake of it, fine. People are translating for, in this case, as you said, to create a business and to make money and to expand the brand. That is very valuable. And people that can do that well, they're adding a lot of value to that organization. And I think you're right. Maybe we haven't done a good job as an industry to kind of highlight that. I think this, and I think there's also a difference, if I might say, around customers, right? I'm sure, I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of customers. There are people that get it. The people understand the value and the concept of return on investment. I think for the clients, it's a little bit more difficult. And I think it's our job to try to make them see that from a localization perspective. I think that is final point, going on. I think people in the SEO world and in the e-commerce world, they understand that quite well.
Yeah.
So they understand I've got very high growth targets I want to expand to North America. So I'm going to have to do something that makes makes me achieve those targets. And I think that's a difference I've seen with maybe the typical localization buyer in other industries or the different persona in the same organization.
Absolutely. So,
so you're going to revolutionize the industry. I like your ideas, so tell me more about these panels.
Yeah, look, I mean, one of the panels that I was thinking about putting together, actually, Maria Jose gave me the idea, my friend from Argentina, that we should probably put a panel together about the knowledge-based industry and how many companies in our localization world industry are thinking about moving from a localization predefined structure, if you will, to expanding the horizon and moving to a knowledge-based industry. And all it means is you're providing a service A now, tomorrow you're going to be providing A, B, C, D. You're going to add more services within the same vein, if you will, of content, content treatment, content creation, content transformation, however you want to do that, consultation, expertise, idea. I think the heavy price the localization industry is paying right now is being generated by, we started as a professional industry at the beginning, and every industry go through those cycles, right? So one of them. And we commoditized our services quite a bit, and I'm talking globally. And so the price you pay when you commoditize something is what we're just talking about. Look for other opportunities. You're not satisfied anymore. That's why, and there's several examples in industries. For instance, the consulting industry, like the big five that Ernst & Young, PwC, etc. They don't change. They're the same. They maintained a professional structure of how they sell their services. They did not downgrade the price because I'm competing with somebody else. In our industry, we're famous for that. I mean, race to the bottom, and you don't have any reasons for business in some cases. Because once, a business doesn't make any money, well, then what is the reason the squeeze that happens on the resources to deliver at a faster rate, at a cheaper rate, so we can make a couple of cents at the end of the day. That's where the knowledge-based industry transformation from a localization perspective is going to be extremely helpful, because now you're not anymore fighting for that piece of pie that everybody wants to fight for. You're just going into a different direction and trying to figure out, okay, what other services I can offer where there's less competition on it. And the skills are valued a lot more than what we are talking about in our localization industry.
I could not agree more.
It's a business opportunity at the same time. I mean, it's a huge business opportunity. You go from a very small industry globally when, let's face it, $60 billion is, from an industry perspective, industry size perspective, although it's very important, absolutely necessary. We need the industry to do what it does on a day-to-day basis, supporting, helping customers market, etc. $60 billion is not that big of an industry.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I like your point about the pricing. I think that's, and we've been all part of that, and it's become really commoditized, as you said. And I think that when you're commoditized, you can be replaced. I think that's also the thing. I think that the knowledge-based model that you're describing makes you future-proof. It means that there is a shift because of technology, because of business environment. You still survive because you're still giving value in that way. Yes. So, I mean, every word. I completely agree.
Right. Well, I'm glad we agree, Pablo. I mean, we have not just...
But I think beyond our industry, right? And I'm going back, I'm thinking more, not my current clients, which, as I said, they're a little bit different, but, my previous clients in localization, honestly, I think the clients get this. I think the clients see the value. I think if the client sees you solving the problems, going beyond the price per word, solving business problems for them and finding opportunities for them, they treat you very differently. They treat you very, very differently. So, and always those relationships are the ones that last the longest. So, I agree. So, I look forward to the panel. So I think we're in agreement. So I think maybe it's a bit of a boring debate, but
so maybe we should introduce somebody who contradicts our opinion to the panel.
Exactly right. So you need to do some market research and see yeah, who thinks we should go the commodity way? I'm not sure someone would agree with that.
When you commoditize an industry, and we've seen what happened with the telecom industry, we've seen what happened with the printing industry. When they get really commoditized, you have two options: either you close shop or you transform. And so they transform their business. Telecom transformed their business. Some of the companies in telecom don't exist anymore. BlackBerry is an example. They still do some software, but they don't exist really. And in the printing industry, they transformed the entire, because there was so competition and race to the bottom on the hardware. It's more about services now.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I look, going back to the opportunity, everyone talks about LLMs, language models, etc. This is some of the technology we were using already. So again, let's think about the opportunity, how well placed this industry is to be relevant in a world where, language is a factor. So I think that is the opportunity. So yeah, if you want to lobby for that, I'm totally, the
two of us are talking here, and I'm not sure how many people would agree with us, but let's hope a few does. And I think there's some merits to have a conversation around it.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. I think you've got a good number of listeners and viewers, right? So I'm sure it'd be great to hear what they think about this topic. I think it's interesting, and I think it's interesting to see also how it changes from maybe small to medium to large companies. I think it'd be great. Yeah, I think so. You could do that and maybe open up for questions. When you do your panel, I think it'd be amazing. I think it'd be really interesting.
Hey, we're coming up to the hour here, Pablo. I want to thank you so much for being with me today. It was a great pleasure to have this conversation. I would have talked to you for a couple of hours, but unfortunately, we're coming on a time here. We have to on, I guess. But thank you so much for being part of this. I'll give you the opportunity for a final word, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Well, again, thank you for having me. I enjoyed that. I think it was great. And then, and again, everyone is happy to reach me. You can find me on LinkedIn if you have any questions about anything, regarding what I said or the organization. And I think if I have to give you one final thought, okay, you put me on the spot there. Maybe thinking about what we've just been talking about. I think in a time of change, it's easy to get lost and to lose your way and to panic. I find it very helpful to stop and think, okay, lots of things are changing. And as you said before, that's normal. What is not changing? What is not changing? People still need to buy products and services. People will still like to consume good content that is relevant to them. People would like to see content in their own language. Think about what is not changing, because that is where the opportunity is. And I think that when you get a little bit overwhelmed, that's a good reminder of what you should be focusing on. That would be my final thought. Absolutely.
And couldn't have said it better. Words of wisdom. Thank you, Pablo, again. And for our audience who are joining us live, I hope you enjoyed the conversation today. Keep an eye on our next conversation. We record this episode every Friday morning around 9 o'clock. I hope you'll join us. And if you're not a subscriber to the channel, the YouTube channel, please consider subscribing. And we are also available on all podcast channels that you know about: Apple, Spotify. I don't want to go through the list. If you want to download this episode, wait a few days. We'll be public. We'll publish it after we do our edits. And by the way, I do the edits, so hopefully I'm doing a good job. I don't know. Multitask on the weekends. Great. Thanks so much, Pablo. And until next time, hopefully you join me again next time for another topic, another conversation.
Thank you.